Hi, and welcome to Chapter 6, Lower Extremities. We'll be taking a look at the toes, foot, calcaneus, and the ankle in this chapter. Let's start with the anatomy of the foot. Remember that your foot, it will be distal to your ankle joint and your lower leg. We will be concentrating on the femur and the knee joint in the next section of this positioning. And so for today, we're only going to take a look at the distal portion of the tib fib, the ankle joint, the calcaneus, and the foot. We're going to divide your foot into three groups: the phalanges, which are the toes, the metatarsals, which is your midfoot, and your tarsals, which is your proximal portion of your foot. Let's take a look at those phalanges and metatarsals. If you remember doing the anatomy of the hand, this is very similar. Instead of carpals, we now have tarsals. We still have the same number of phalanges and the same number of metatarsals, which were your metacarpals in your hand. And we also have the tarsals, which are included with part of the talus and the calcaneus. So if we break this down, here are your distal phalanges. You'll have 5 of those, so when they're ordering toes, they'll indicate first digit, second digit, third digit, fourth digit, and fifth digit. Down here are your cuneiforms, which are part of your tarsal bones. You have your first and second cuneiform, your navicular, and your cuboid. You also have your talus and your calcaneus, which make up the dorsal aspect of your foot. Your metatarsals also include that sesamoid bone, which you're going to find on that first toe. This is very similar to the first digit where you have sesamoid bones in your hand. Joints of your foot. Make sure that you take a look at these. We have our tarso-metatarsal joints, so these are your TMTs. You have proximal interphalangeal joints, which are your PIP, distal interphalangeal joints, and we also have metatarsal phalangeal joints. Your central rays are going to come through primarily at the third TMT joints for those APs, which is a little different from your hands where you had your MCPs. Here's a look at your foot from the side. You can see here's your fibula, your tibia, your talus, your cuboid. This whole back portion of your heel is your calcaneus. You can see the navicular in this view, and you can also see those cuneiform bones that are now superimposed. So let's take a look at those tarsal bones. Just like I told you to come up with a saying for your carpal bones, you should come up with a saying for your tarsal bones. If we take a look here, let's start at the dorsal or the back portion of your foot. This is your calcaneus. We then move up to this purple portion, which is your talus. You have your navicular bone, so in your hand that's called scaphoid. And remember I told you that used to be called the navicular, but because there was another location of this bone, they eliminated that and now just call your hand the scaphoid. Well, your navicular is actually letter C here on this diagram. Your cuboid bone is indicated in that light green shading. And then you have your cuneiform. So you have a medial, middle, and lateral cuneiform. They'll also refer to it as first, second, and third cuneiforms. Alright, so your navicular is going to actually articulate with your talus and those first, second, and third cuneiforms. Your cuneiform, if we're looking at that lateral cuneiform, actually articulates with the second, third, and fourth metatarsals, your cuboid, and your navicular. So make sure that when you're looking over your anatomy, you understand what is articulating on what end of each of those tarsal bones. So if I were to ask you your cuneiform articulates with what, you should be able to tell me that it's going to articulate with the first metatarsal, the immediate cuneiform, and the navicular bone. Your cuboid is going to articulate with the fifth metatarsal, your calcaneus, and that lateral cuneiform. Just want to point out that there are sesamoid bones on that first tarsal. So your first digit of your toes. There are 2 sesamoid bones, and we can actually do specialty views to demonstrate those. They are located near the joint, and they are on the plantar surface of your foot. and they are embedded in tendons. We have a couple arches that we need to be aware of when we take a look at our foot, and the arch is going to determine how much of an angle you put on your x-ray tube. So we want to take a look at a person's foot at their medial arch. On the lateral side it's called the lateral arch or longitudinal arch, and we can also look at it through those cuneiforms as a transverse arch, which is your medial to your lateral side. So depending on how much their arch is going to determine how much of an angle we put on our AP foot. That ankle joint, our lateral malleoli and medial malleoli are key in positioning. We need to make sure that if we're doing an AP that those are parallel to our image receptor. We also have what's called a distal tibular fibular joint. We have what's called the Mortise. So we actually have a view that's called the Mortise view to demonstrate this. Your fibula and your tibia make up that portion of your ankle joint. You have an anterior tubercle, a tibioplanfoid, that you can also see. And all of these are going to join us the talus, which will be connected to your calcaneus. So if we take a look at the AP ankle, you can see your tibial shaft or your fibular shaft. Here's your lateral malleolus on the lateral side of the body, your medial malleolus, which is on the medial side of the body. Here's your navicular, here's your talus, and then it superposes over the calcaneus. On the side view, you can actually see the calcaneus. Here's your talus, your tibia, and then your fibula is superimposed underneath the tibia. Two surfaces that you should be aware of is your dorsal aspect, which is also called your dorsum, and your plantar aspect, which is the plantar sole surface of the foot. 4 motions to be aware of: your dorsal flex, your plantar flex, inversion, and eversion. If you can't remember those motions, then you may want to review those, because we'll be referring to those terms when we're doing positioning for both the foot and the ankle.